Well, here we are. We're going to be talking about transition now. Transition is so critical. We've talked about what is people going through programs and coming out of prison. And, you heard comments from Rick and Jay about Rick coming out saying, I had nothing. What is the likelihood of success for someone who says, I have nothing? It's not good, is it? So the good news is the Lord has brought about a number of different ministries that are very helpful in providing financial support and relational support in helping people in their transition experience. I'll talk about mine at the end here, but next to me I have Jennifer Gaines, and Jennifer has been running JCS Homes for, 3 years?
Correct.
Yeah. And then we have Dave, Pastor Dave Phillips, and he is with Life Rebuilders. He's been doing prison ministry for 12 years, yeah. And more recently with kind of leading things with the last 2 at Life Rebuilders?
Life Rebuilders, about that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So what we'd like to do is hear from them, their own story, and then what their ministry is and how that operates. So Jennifer, you want to start?
Sure. So, I am a survivor of a lot of things. I have my own story. I ran away from home after my parents got divorced. I took their divorce really hard and made it impossible for my mother to control me, and I was just really angry with her, and that anger just led me into the arms of a trafficker, and I spent 28 years being trafficked all across America. And during that time that I was trafficked, I became addicted to drugs, and I was incarcerated at Wksp twice. I heard somebody talk about Sauk Center. I was there a couple of times. So I've been incarcerated, a lot. I've been homeless, a lot of things, many suicide attempts. I've been through the whole child protection thing, losing custody of my children. I've had many abortions, just all kinds of things that I have been through and have overcome. After, I think when I finally lost custody of my daughter, Destiny, and I saw the abuse that she was going through in the foster care system, I had an ironic case because I somehow was able to work it out, so I still had visitation with her. And so I was able to see her 3 weekends a month, and I saw the abuse that she was going through at that home drove me to changing my life around. And I named her Destiny because I knew she was going to be the child that changed my destiny. I don't know how I knew that, but she did. Well, anyway, that led me to Breaking Free. And Breaking Free is a nonprofit that works with women who've been trafficked. And I went through an internship program at Breaking Free. I heard you guys talk about mentoring, and that mentoringship is so important. They offered me that at Breaking Free, and that's what saved my life. And after that, I became a staff member at Breaking Free. I worked there for 8 years. 5 of those years, I specifically worked at their housing program. And then that led me to opening my own sober home. And I've been doing that now for 3 years.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Dave.
Hello. Thanks for having me here this morning. I am in kind of a unique situation where mine started as prison ministry. Right now, I know we're talking about transition from prison back to society, but I think the backstory there helps a little bit, whereas I was pretty reckless when I was a kid, so I didn't come from a college classroom to doing what I'm doing today. Went to a lot of funerals as a young man. We were either overdosing from drugs or getting in motorcycle accidents or car accidents or getting thrown into prison ourselves. And like many of you, my path in this life that I'm in now came from an invitation. So anyone listening on the internet right now, or any of us in this room, can relate to that it's the invite. About 12 years ago, I was invited to Lino Lakes Prison. I don't even remember who was speaking that night. It was a Friday night, and I just sat in the back and watched. There was about close to 300 inmates in there, and I remember the emotion I felt as they were going back to their cells that night when everything was over. And again, I don't even remember which church spoke. It wasn't River Valley, where I'm on staff now as a prison pastor, but it was a church in the suburbs here. When they were going back to their cells, they were so appreciative of what we were doing there. We were giving up a pretty valuable commodity, which is a Friday night. You know, that's a pretty valuable thing to a lot of those guys. And I was on my way to dinner that night with my wife, and they're on their way back to their cells. So it just struck me as to the humanity of these men. And I've seen that over and over since men's prison, women's prison, and juvenile prisons. And I'll fast forward and get to the point of why I'm here, the transitions. But spending the last 12 years in 14 prisons, 8 jails, and 3 states, I've learned a lot of the common factors that I have with them, you know, and it is the humanity. And once you separate a lot of these folks from the drugs that got them there, you know, and it could be indirectly too. The crime they could have committed was to get money to get drugs, you know, it could be indirectly, but so many of the paths lead to the drugs, and the enemy of our society right now. Once you separate that and see that these are real people with talents, with senses of humor, or sense of humor, I guess it would be. And now I just, again, with another invite many years later, about a decade later, from the folks at Life Rebuilders. They invited me to start a Bible study there, and I thought, well, if they would let me do it on Thursday mornings, that would be perfect, because I go to Hennepin County Jail every Thursday morning, and the house is a couple blocks from Hennepin County Jail, so why don't I stop in there and do a Bible study and then go on to do the jail Bible study after that. Well, that progressed into my position now, and I'm the director for Dakota County for Life Rebuilders. I have 4 houses, and when we're full, I have 24 guys living under my care in the 4 houses, 6 in each house. It's in Apple Valley, Lakeville, and Burnsville. And we are kind of an oasis for these folks coming out of prison. As Jay mentioned, if you caught that he said he was at Life Rebuilders. Again, that's where I am. He lived in our Burnsville house and did quite well there. But it's a chance for them to come out and be able to breathe when they get out. There's so many things that are taken off the table that they don't have to worry about. Immediate employment, or how am I going to pay first and last month's rent? Are they going to accept me? Because a lot of felons aren't accepted in rental properties. So they have a lot of these fears in their last 6 months of their incarceration. They have a lot of these fears of how am I going to get along? How am I going to transition out there? And what am I going to do when I get out there? If they're so busy and they're so rushed, they'll take a job that they have to take, not a job that they want to take. They'll take a place to live that they have to take, not a place that they want to take. They won't have the chance to take that breath and say, okay, what next? What am I going to do next? And in Life Rebuilders, they have, I don't have the title of mentor, but that's exactly what I am. And so are all the high capacity volunteers that we recruit to come into our houses and say, here's the guys, teach them how to tie a tie, teach them how to play chess, teach them how to, it's becoming less and less balancing checkbooks, but I suppose whatever the next thing equivalent to this decade would be, teach them how to do that, But I brought up prison before that because I know so many men and women in prison that I can kind of talk to them and say, hey, as long as I'm director in Dakota County working for Life Rebuilders, you won't be homeless, and if it isn't in my house, we have 14 houses. Life Rebuilders does. I manage 4 of them. Life Rebuilders has 14 with 114 beds. So they can again, they can start that, and that's an optimal time for mentors too. I've learned from Tom, the last 6 months in and the first 6 months out are an optimal time for mentors. And if I can get them to stop worrying about that in their last 6 months of incarceration and start, focusing on all the possibilities that are before them, that's a great thing, because I've talked to guys that are just, they just don't know what they're going to do when they get out. And if I can say, okay, okay, let's breathe for one, and I will even come pick you up. I've picked people up. I've waited at the exit of Faribault Prison to pick people up and bring them to one of my houses. Same with the jails, Scott, Dakota, and Hennepin County jails. But it's the fact that they get to breathe. It's the fact that they get to calm down and regroup and focus on how to move forward without just being thrown into a new aquarium with colder water. If that makes any sense. If you've ever had an aquarium, that would make sense.
That's a good metaphor. I've heard many people, men and women, make the comment that it took me a year on the outside to find out who I am. Now, if you stop and think about that, that's when you have good support, you're safe housing, you have people around you that are helping you adjust and adapt. So it just shows you that there is a process involved. Tell you a little bit about my experience. Back in 2003, myself and a number of guys went down to Kansas City. There's a prophetic ministry down there called, the Kansas City Fellowship. And they have the IHOP, International House of Prayer. It's not a breakfast place. And anyway, they have where you can sign up and receive prophetic ministry. And one of the guys that went down there was a friend of mine, Kent Garborg. Kent, at the time, was in his 60s, a very successful retired businessman. And he had a prophetic word that you're going to help in ministry to men in the inner city, which was pretty much diametrically opposed to everything in his life. And he came home thinking, I wonder if that was from the Lord. And his wife said, no, you probably should pay attention to that. Well, a week later, he got a phone call from the Salvation Army Adult Rehab Center. How would you like to start an Alpha program, Alpha course, at the ARC with inner city men? And, you can see obviously that the Lord is working here. So he gathered a team, myself included, and we started an Alpha course down at the ARC with about 80 men. And those of you who might be familiar with the Alpha course, it's a very gentle, relational way to hear about what the Bible teaches and what the gospel is, and invites people to come to faith over the course of about 10 weeks. And they saw a tremendous response, and many men became Christians. But when they left the program there, they would often go to unsupported housing, back to old girlfriends or using friends, and relapse. So part of the ministry decision was they had purchased a house in Golden Valley. I do have some literature over on the table over there if you want to grab some on your way out. The house we have, we purchased that in 2005. And so we've had about 120 guys come through there. Our goal in Barris is to have people stay there 6 months to a year. The idea to get a foundation under them and to come alongside them relationally. That so many of the things that you heard Jay and Rick talk about, and you guys are talking about, come relationally. How do you balance a checkbook or create a budget? We have to actually sit down and do that, and you have to have some trust to do that kind of stuff. So what has happened for my situation, back about a year and a half ago, Prison Fellowship was telling me that they were going to be moving away from reentry, and I was the reentry manager. And so that raised the question, what about me? And so I began asking the Lord, what do you have for me? And it just so happened I had a coffee meeting planned with my the founder of Barris, Kent Garborg, and they had just decided just before that coffee meeting to offer the executive director position to whomever to go forward in the ministry. And he wanted to know, was I interested in applying? And I said, absolutely, I'm interested. And so it was just an amazing God thing. They created a job description, pretty much paralleled my resume, and they hired me in July 1st. And August 1st, we started doing ministry down at the Adult Rehab Center. They had no volunteers down there for a number of years. And now we're up to 15 volunteers on a Monday night. And half of us are guys who've been through prison and have come out of addiction, who have testimonies that are inspiring to the men. The other half of us are mentors who used to mentor at Prison Fellowship. And so we're building a community to come around these men, spiritual fathers. And we're doing it in a pandemic. So I'm pretty thrilled that God's doing what he's doing. And so I do manage the house, but our goal is to build this community of mentors and to see how many men we can get. They now are starting an Alpha course again at the Salvation Army, which is an amazing story in itself. And so God's doing all sorts of things. And it's just real excited to be doing what we're doing. As far as transition go, who are the people who come to your house, Jennifer?
So I've done some speaking at Wksp, and so I've gotten some women from Wksp. Years ago, when I was working at Breaking Free, I got to be in a curriculum done through Five Stone Media. It was called Bloodline, which I think the women in the PFA participate in that curriculum.
Yep.
And so I've gotten women from the PFA program at Wksp, and they were like, "Oh, you were in the curriculum that we," anyway.
The celebrity.
Yeah, I'm a celebrity. I did, and it's funny because I didn't know at the time, I got some harassment, from coworkers. They're like, "Oh, you should make them pay you for being in that curriculum." And something in my heart says, I just kind of going to let God take care of that part later. And then COVID hit, and they were releasing people from Wksp, and I had just opened, I have a side-by-side house, and the other side of the house was opening, and that whole side, 3 people came from Wksp from that COVID release because they saw me in that curriculum. It's funny how God works. So I got paid anyway, And so I get people from Wksp. I get a lot of people that are attending intensive outpatient treatment at New Way. I work very closely still with Breaking Free. So it's interesting that a lot of the women that are at my sober house are also victims of trafficking, because my years of speaking and stuff, and while working at Breaking Free, I have kind of a social media following and a community of people victims and stuff that I've worked with, so a lot of the people at my house are also victims of trafficking. And we know that addiction and trafficking go hand in hand. And a lot of times you can't talk about addiction in treatment. You can't talk about prostitution in treatment, which is odd, but, because, we know that when you're in treatment, we've done all kinds of things in our addiction, but for some reason, nobody wants to talk about prostitution in treatment. So sometimes, or often when they hear that, "Oh, Jennifer Gaines has a sober house now, I want to go there because we can talk about prostitution and feel safe and not judged." And we all know that as part of change, you have to be in that place where you don't feel any judgment. Because when there's judgment in the room, we just can't change. And so I get people from Breaking Free, from that community. And I'm a partner with New Way. I'm a member of MASH. So a lot of the treatment centers, when you're a member of MASH, they have that.
Explain what MASH is.
So MASH is the Minnesota Association of Sober Homes. They hold sober homes to a higher standard, because there's a lot of people that have sober homes that they're not regulated. MASH kind of tends to, they do inspections, they hold you to a higher standard. Make sure you're doing things that, so that the residents, have rights. There's somebody that they can make, a complaint to, or you get trainings. Your house managers can go and get, proper training on how to manage a house, things like that.
Yeah. One of the concerns and the issues for any kind of transitional house is people who are in recovery tend to relapse. And when they relapse, you don't always know right away. And what the risk is if they relapse and then bring drugs back into the home and help other people relapse, the whole house can relapse, which is devastating. And so there's a way to, how do we find out who needs help right away, and how do we make sure they don't come back and pull everybody down with them? And that's where, MASH and other houses, some have a reputation for maintaining a good, sober house. Some have a reputation for hanging on to people out of need to get money, try to hang on to them even when they're using, even when it puts the house at risk. So that's an issue with knowing the landscape of who's doing what where.
Yeah, what's nice about MASH too is it gives you like a community of other sober homeowners who've been doing this a while, where you can pick up the phone and call them and get advice.
Right.
And they have quarterly meetings and policies, that when you're creating a policy, you can get advice from them.
It's good,
Yeah.
supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Dave? What are the things that you're doing down at Life Rebuilders to help guys move forward?
All of the above. We take the guys from all the jails, all the prisons, Teen Challenge, Union Gospel Mission. Life Rebuilders is a faith-based transitional housing program. So we do Bible studies each morning. All the guys are up and ready to go at 8 o'clock on weekdays to do their Bible studies. And everything I talk about, I'm not going to say before I say every sentence here that this is before COVID. So everything I'm talking about is before COVID. We have volunteers come to the house, and we try to find high capacity volunteers, and but not experts or perfect people either. Just people with compassion, people that have maybe made a mistake or two in their lives as well, that can understand, because that's what I was thinking of when Tom was talking about an entire household using drugs. It can be devastating to the house. It can bring the whole thing down. That's where the imperfect folks come in. We can see that coming. Sometimes we can forecast that. A lot of times it's the girlfriend or the job. He's going to get a little bit more of my attention when he gets a girlfriend or a job. But also, like I said previously, my past helps with that. I didn't come from a college classroom to doing what I'm doing right now. I ran with a pretty reckless group of folks, and you can see that coming. So my job title is to love the guys. And at first, I just stood there and scratched my head when Gary Parker, my boss, told me that. Just love the guys. I mean, how do you measure that? And now I fully see how you measure it. It's very measurable. It's very measurable. Jay can attest to that, and other people throughout our history of doing what we do. It's the relationships. It's the fruit of what you're doing. You see it in the fruit that comes from your ministry. We have a Wednesday lunch where everybody from all my houses gets together on a Wednesday, and I rotate houses. And we invite our volunteers and anyone who ever lived at Life Rebuilders. They're all welcome back. And, in the middle of the week, in the middle of a work day, we have 30 people in a house having lunch together. And many of them used to live at Life Rebuilders. That's how you measure it. Another way to measure it, I guess, would be the 28 UA kits I have in my truck out in the parking lot. We do UAs on Mondays a lot. We do them randomly or whenever I would suspect something. But that's not as a tool to bully them. A lot of them appreciate that. It's a safety net. It's actually to show, The Bible talks about the law is there to direct, and the law is there to keep them from hitting the ditches on either side of the road. This is a safety net, knowing that after the weekend comes, when they go on their weekend pass, when they come back, there's oftentimes a drug test waiting for them. But again, not to bully them or belittle them or embarrass them or anything else, but to give them something to think about. There's someone who cares about my sobriety back at home, and they focus on that part. The guys that aren't using never regret the UAs, or they never give us a hard time, because I think they understand I'm not having a whole lot of fun handling that stuff either, But
Yeah.
we do it through, to answer Tom's question more directly, we do this through volunteers, and we change as it goes. The guys that live with us now didn't live with us a year ago for the most part. They come from 24 sets of parents. Geography's different where they came from. School districts are different where they came from. Traditions are different. So we change as our residents change. And I wouldn't want to do things the same way we were doing it a couple years ago. Those guys aren't with us. So I want to do things that will benefit the guys that are currently with us. Again, the volunteer can do something as simple as teach them how to tie a tie, do a job interview,
Yep.
cook,
Yep.
shop,
Yep. Yeah.
all that stuff.
That's good. Well, another question I have for you guys, and I'm going to go first, is how do you measure progress? What do you see? How do you see progress happening in your residence? In our house, and when I first took over, I don't collect the rent. It goes to our bookkeeper, and I got information that a couple of our guys were always late on rent, and they were trying to be compassionate to not let them pay rent late. But you stop and think about it. Are we enabling this person, or are we helping them to learn how to manage their money? And so we had a discussion amongst ourselves and the leaders, and we decided that we were going to bring in Dave Ramsey's stuff. And so he talks about how to do budgeting. One of the first baby steps, he calls it, is putting aside $1,000 for emergency fund, which is really an excellent idea, and I recommend it if you haven't done it. Anyway, for people who are living paycheck to paycheck, that seems like it's just a huge mountain to climb. But we went through, sat down, did the budgeting with two of the guys, and they were like, great, I'm going to try to do this. And to their credit, 2 months later, they had achieved that. They had set aside $1,000. And the sense of reward that they had themselves was just awesome. And so we've learned that, as we bring people into the house, I always have a conversation. Do you have a budget? Do you keep a budget? What do you know about that? And if they don't, well, then we'll go through that series with them, and maybe with the other guys, and refresh their memory. What's fun is that one of the guys went and got a new job, and not only is he managing his finances well, but I see the growing sense of confidence in him, which we have weekly meetings on Wednesday nights, and I just showed up and we sat down in a meeting, and I could see across the table that here Joey is just so full of confidence. I'm feeling good about who he is and what he's doing. I was just so proud of him, and I thought, this is going to carry him forward and into the next step of his journey. So some financial awareness, I think, is when people sees that and take ownership. That's a cool thing. How about you guys? What are some things you see as progress in your folks?
I guess I've been measuring when usually, well, one way is at house meetings when people are checking in, when I'm hearing things like, my meetings went well and I love this house, and there's like this kumbaya feeling in the house. So I'm like, okay, great, things are going well. But the other way I measure success is when people are leaving and they've got housing and a job and
Leaving well.
and I'm doing their exit, and I'm checking that box, found housing, found a job,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. That's great.
Jay, you want to stand up? Right there, that's progress. I have another real quick story to tell. At those lunches that we have a weekly memorization verse from the Bible that I put up. I got 52 of them, and I put them on the whiteboards of all my houses during the week. And when they come to the lunch, I picked 3 names out of a bag, so almost like they're random drug tests that I do. So they're used to that. And I will start with one. My wife travels a lot, and she buys gifts from around the country, just small ones, just $5 gifts from around the country. And then if they get the Bible verse right, they win the prize that my wife bought, and they get, a round of applause and everything. It's just another win in the win column for them, And so each Monday morning, the new verse goes up there, and they have to memorize it by lunchtime because they think they might get picked. And, it's just a great feeling for the rest. It makes the rest of their day just that simple little bit of recognition, And every December, Hosanna Church in Lakeville lets us throw a pretty big Christmas party for all the Lifer Builders guys. And 2 Christmases ago, we didn't do it this past Christmas. 2 Christmases ago, about 12 of my guys came up to me and said, "Pastor Dave, this week's Bible verse is above the urinal in bathroom number 5, It wasn't graffiti. Nobody wrote it there. It was actually put there on purpose by the church. But they remembered the Bible verse at the Christmas party, and they found me in this big church to tell me that the Bible verse is above the urinal. So it's getting their attention when they're doing, well, you know what they're doing. But those kind of things are progress when they want to show me something at the house, or they call me to tell me good news. This Christmas, one of the guys met me in the driveway, grabbed my hand and said, "Close your eyes." And this is a big dude that spent a lot of time in prison, It's these kind of things that warm my heart. He says, "Close your eyes." He brings me in the house. And I said, "Doug, don't you let me trip on anything, Brings me downstairs, brings me into the living room and says, "Open your eyes." And I open my eyes, and there's a decorated Christmas tree right there. But he met me on the driveway to bring me into the house to show me these kind of things. Those, to me, are progress, because now they're interested in my approval. They're interested in my recognition. They're interested in pleasing people instead of taking from people. I'm seeing the humanity of these men that are in my houses, and to have them as friends, even after they move out of Lifer Builders, to be able to be friendly with Jay long after he moves out of Lifer Builders is just 100%. That's progress. That's progress.
Yeah.
That's good, yeah. Pre-COVID, I know, Dave, you said you'd had volunteers come in. Have you used volunteers in your situation, Jennifer?
Yeah, I use them a lot. Like when I first opened the Camden House, there's a group called Trafficking Justice, and they have a coalition of churches that help victims of trafficking, and they literally furnished the whole Camden House from head to toe.
Wow.
And they still do, they donate, Christmas gifts and Valentine's Day bags and stuff like that. And, there's times where they adopted women, fixed women's cars, things like that, so that they could get to work. And then when I opened the Devon House was named after my son. My son passed away in 2019. Monday would be 2 years. He was killed drinking and driving. And so when we opened the Devon House, all his friends and school teachers furnished that whole house. And so, yeah, we work with volunteers all the time. Yeah.
This is being live streamed and recorded, so this can be emailed to you and sent to other people as well. What types of needs do you have for volunteers?
Well, that's a
What do you
really
like?
good question.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few things that, there's a lot of things we need, but some things that just come to my mind right off the top of my head, like, we need things like, there's a tree at the Camden House that needs to be trimmed, and I've got some gutters that need to get cleaned out, and, it'd be really nice if, somebody who knew how to help me with my website, or, I just switched to becoming a nonprofit and looking for somebody to teach me maybe how to apply for some grants, things like that.
Yeah, cool. What's your Dave? What volunteer needs do you have?
If you're an adult, I can plug you in somewhere. I can. And I don't want to sound like we're desperate. Not at all. We're doing great. We're doing really good. I'm saying, because there's not a person in this room that can't teach me something. I'm saying that, and that's what I want for these men that I love. I want you to teach them something. Even if it's a joke, a clean joke, even if it's how to draw something, how to cook, how to shop, how to do math, how to read, how to tie, how to play chess, Monopoly, checkers. These houses are that friendly. We don't have any bullies living with us at the present time. We just, again, I don't want to sound like, oh, if you're an adult, I can use you. I'm just saying, if you have anything to teach anyone, I can use you. I'll find a place for you.
Awesome. I want to point out that we were very intentional to invite Jennifer to this gathering, this workshop. There are not very many women's transitional houses in the Twin Cities, and there's not very many healthy ones. And so Jennifer has had a reputation for really taking care of people well and helping them move along. I was wondering if I could have Fanta at the back. Fanta Black, would you mind standing up? She has just started her own house in Brooklyn Center, April 1st. So let's give her a hand.
Yeah.
So anything you need that we can help you with, Fanta?
I mean, I feel like sometimes when say everything like you were just saying, I mean, things aren't always needed. It's a physical house of location.
Okay.
There are people with emotional needs, physical needs, and then you have the house. So,
Yeah.
I feel like echoing the comparison that you just said, if you're an adult with any ability, then you can use it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm excited for you that this is a faith venture on your part, and we want to see you succeed. So if anyone has a heart or anybody viewing this to contact Faye, maybe you could give your contact information to Faye Connor, and that way we can relay it. Anyone has any resources or volunteer issues or concerns, we'd love to have you follow up for Fanta and Jennifer.
Yeah.
Yeah. You bet. Well, I hope everybody gets the picture that we're all kingdom workers here today. We're all doing different stuff to help people come out of prison, change in prison, succeed out of prison, and become the people that God wants them to be. And it takes a real diverse team to see that happen, doesn't it? So that's cool. Well, we do have a little bit of time left. Do we have any questions for this panel here today? Anybody have any questions that you'd like to bring?
Anyone have questions? If not, what we might ask, Mirla?
Yeah, I just want to know about the people.
Jenny?
For the moving of the home, what can we do? What do you need storage for what is for job interview, shoes? What is it that you need that you need some food burden resources?
Yeah. So we can't, I don't have the storage space to like accept like donations. We did try that for a while, and we just got bombarded, you know? And so the women do use outside resources for like, you know, clothing donations and stuff like that. But there is always a need for things like bus cards. That's a huge need. The women do need bus cards a lot. And car repairs, that's always a need. Somebody to go to for, you know, so there's always there's a lot of places that offer resources for like their sober, there's always that deposit that they have to pay. There's some agencies that are already doing this though that, you know, so this isn't necessarily apply to this. Yeah, like there's gardening. A lot of the women want to learn how to garden, and there's room for that, you know, in the yard and stuff. I've had plants and stuff that the women always are asking for yard tools, and, you know, I've bought some over the years, but they tend to disappear. So anybody that wants to donate their time to teach them how to plant and garden, or, you know, to replant plants. That's all I can think of off the top of my head, but we just can't take like any physical clothing and furniture donations right now.
Central Baptist Church in St. Paul does take clothing donations. They do have a place to store and sort things, and they do give that whatever's there to the community for free. So they do help a lot. There's a work release facility just down the street from them that they help a lot of the women there. But we could certainly send other people. We just need to know who you are, and they'll serve you. So that's a source you could donate stuff to. Central Baptist Church in St. Paul.
We can take things such as cleaning supplies, towels, linens, things like that.
Tom, thank you. Thank Jennifer. Thanks, Pastor Dave, for being with us this morning and helping us better understand not only the need for housing and help and mentoring as men and women come out of facilities, but the places and the people like yourselves devoted to making a difference. Thank you very much.